Welcome to Hungry for Answers with me, Clare, recovery coach professional. Do you love food, alcohol, drugs, sex, social media, cigarettes, or gambling a little too much? The traditional narrative says that addiction to these vices is the problem. The truth is, they are just symptoms. This hit show takes you from recovery to your ultimate life as my special guests and I help you discover how underneath every vice is the addiction to the suffering that developed due to unhealed trauma. So what can you do? Hungry for Answers provides groundbreaking, proven solutions from my best-selling spiritual book, Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace. It's time to stop suffering and start living your ultimate life. You have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. Hungry for Answers starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Clare, and welcome to Hungry for Answers on Transformation Talk Radio. Because I was so hungry for answers in my own life with my 40-year battle with food addiction, I wrote Feast and Famine: Healing Addiction with Grace, and this ultimately led to this radio show. So stay with us for the next hour where we'll talk about the path from addiction to recovery to your ultimate life. Today, I have my dear friend Linda Roebuck here to discuss the incredible slippery slope of liking something too much that may indeed morph into an addiction. So, what is hiding underneath it all? Linda has her MA in counseling psychology, and she is a visionary leader and transformational author and the founder of ACT, a community of transformation. So I haven't known Linda that long, but we are really dear friends. We met on a collaboration that we were working on, and it was almost like spiritual love at first sight. we we were looking across at each other in Zoom, and we knew that we would become fast friends. So here we are today. And so I'd like to welcome Linda to Hungry for Answers. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Robin, and thank you so much for inviting me. I do remember those initial times that we connected with our eyes, and I'm just honored to be here and a little bit like stepping out of my comfort zone.
Yes, it sure is. Doing this is a definite step out of my comfort zone too. So, Linda, my first question for you is, can you describe a time when you were so hungry for answers in your life that it almost seemed impossible to solve the situation and you were just so focused on finding the answers?
Thinking about that, the first thing that comes to my mind was when I was a young child, probably one of my earliest memories around 4 o'clock, I mean, around 4 years old. And I was in church and I was watching my parents being baptized,
Hmm.
and it was kind of fearful for me. And I was in Sunday school and I was hearing, God made you. And I thought, and this is my quest, this has been my question. If God made me, who made God?
Hmm.
And it began to be this search of, who am I? How did I get here? Where am I from? Why am I here? So
Hmm.
that's been a longing, just that I've had a hunger for answers to who I am and why I'm here, why my purpose is. And after all these years on this planet, I'm beginning to have some clarity,
Oh,
your name,
yeah,
around some of that.
yeah,
And
that's
that
great.
leads me to a deep thirsting hunger for when I was drinking too much. I knew it, and I realized I had reached a point I couldn't stop
Yeah,
by myself. And I
yeah,
say that, but I hid it. I hid it for so long.
yeah.
And so
So
this is
we'll talk
my
about that
journey.
in
Yes.
yeah
Okay.
in a little while. But you know, one of this radio show is based on Feast and Famine, healing addiction with grace. And the central premise of the book is that we are addicted to suffering. And so it is truly the only addiction on our planet. And then we pick our vice or our habit, whatever we have to I don't know, to make us feel better because we're wallowing in our pain. And so my question to you is, what are your thoughts on the idea that we are first addicted to suffering and then we choose a substance or a vice to feel better?
Well, that I have pondered that because I had to question what is suffering.
Mm.
And what I know is pain. I don't know of anybody that I know in my life that hasn't had some sort of pain, whether it's physical, emotional, whatever. But what I realized, pain and suffering are different.
Yes.
Suffering for me comes from my thinking, my getting myself wrapped up in certain thoughts. I think it was Eckhart Tolle that said suffering has something to do with mind made by me,
Hmm.
and where the thoughts are just making our suffering. So what I really feel like is the thinking I had around it, and the shame and the whatever that just kept going on. You're not, why are you doing this? It was causing me great suffering. So I definitely understand it is suffering. And,
Yeah, and
and
and I find it so interesting that people have um, such a big reaction when I share that we're really addicted to suffering. I think, if we go back even to your conversation about being in church, I think people don't think that they're allowed to suffer because suffering is um, reserved for the big religious icons and not little old me. What do you think about that?
well, I know that I suffer, and I feel like I've broken out of because I can catch myself quicker now. I can't say that I totally get what you're saying about how that formed for the suffering. That maybe it is but maybe it is in our society, maybe it is our consciousness that somehow suffering is for saints or something. And I
Hmm.
don't know, I would have to think about that.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. So, talking about pain, we know that pain is inevitable. That was one of the tenets in Feast and Famine, and that suffering is an option. And later on, I learned that suffering was not an option for those of us who are really on the transformational path. So, can you share with the audience you've created an organization, ACT, that is a community of transformation? Can you share what transformation means to you and why suffering may not be required on the transformation path?
I do believe suffering is optional, and that is what I think I was leading to. So the question is, by where I've been, okay, let me make sure I understand what you asked.
Hmm.
That after creating, which we've created this organization, and I was the founder. It's been in existence 2 decades.
Hmm.
But your question was about the suffering.
Transformation. Yes, because what I learned is that when you make the shift from spiritual to divine, meaning when you are no longer just learning about your spiritual path, but you're living it. And for me, living the divine path is also about living in a state of transformation. So, on the divine path, suffering is no longer an option because it's no longer required.
I got what you're talking about right now, I think. For me, transformation is a shift in consciousness, a shift in a mindset,
Mhm.
a new perspective. a different way of looking at things, of living and being. And yes, transformation, it's a deeper change. It's not just change. And we know that change is inevitable.
Mhm.
Everything changes.
Everything changes for sure. So we're going to be going to a break soon. And you're listening to Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. And when we come back, Linda and I are going to chat about the slippery slope from a bad habit to an addictive behavior. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello again. We're back on Hungry for Answers with Robin Clare. And so for more information on me and my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Clare, CLARE-ITY.com. So we have two giveaways today, one from me and one from Linda. And so for the first person who calls 1-800-930-2819, and again, that's 1-800-930-2819, you will get a copy of my best-selling spiritual book, Feast and Famine, Healing Addiction with Grace. So today my guest is Linda Roebuck, who is talking to us about how our bad habits can morph into addictions. But before we continue, Linda, I want to make sure that everyone knows how to connect with you. Can you share your website information?
Sure. Um, my website is lindaroebuck.com, and
Great.
Roebuck is spelled with an E, so that's pretty easy. And I want to mention another website.
Mhm.
It's related to mine. It's about the book that we're talking about, Circular Leadership, Together
Mhm.
We Rise. And that website, which I can be reached also, can get information from there, is circularleadership.global.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Linda, when I have a guest on, typically they have a recovery story, but it's sort of interesting because what I've been thinking about a lot and really inspired to write a blog post about is that I think everybody has a recovery story. They may not look at their life like that, but especially those who are on the spiritual path, I think for sure they have a recovery story that they're working on. And I don't know, I don't know how many times I've thought about that this week. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about was your recovery story. So can you tell us how you went from just liking alcohol to knowing that you had an addiction problem?
Yes, I'll be glad to share. I, like I was talking about in the beginning, grew up where drinking was a sin. So I wasn't around alcohol. And I felt I really didn't even have the taste of alcohol until I was the night of my marriage.
Mm.
And I didn't like it. It now just surprises me how I came into the kind of situation that I did. So I started liking it a little bit when I was in my 30s, and it was social. It was so much fun. And I never even thought about it. It was just kind of what to do. And in my 40s, I bonded a lot with people as we'd have drinks after work or
Mhm.
whatever. And it was probably um, late 40s, and in my 50s, I don't know if I was choosing alcohol or it was choosing me, but it became like just kind of habitual,
Mhm.
not a problem, habitual. And then toward the end of my 50s, and actually it was in the 60s, I started having, you talked about suffering, the mind. I'm drinking too much. I need
Mhm.
to stop. Um, I'm not going to do it tomorrow. I'll have this tonight, and I'm stopping. And then I began to realize I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop by myself anyway. And yet, then I got into secrets, hiding
Yeah.
it,
Hiding.
figuring ways. And it was always on my mind. This is one of the signs that I realize we have is I've got to make sure, this was my thought then at that time, that I have my supply. Oh, especially if we were going to have a snowstorm or anything where I couldn't have access. So then I started hiding, and what tormenting suffering that I was laying on myself at that time. It was almost unbearable when I go
Yeah.
back.
And believe me, I get the hiding. Having bulimia for 40 years, I think I was hiding in the bathroom a lot. And and I remember when the book came out, so many people were in shock. And I'm like, well, it is really not something that I would talk about, right? Very few people knew about it because there's a lot of shame around it. And one of the things in our conversations that I think when what really pointed out to me that you thought you knew you were hiding was when you started to pour your wine. Is it wine? I don't remember what
Yes,
it was.
wine was
Yeah,
my vice.
into a mug instead of a
Yeah.
wine glass. So can you tell our audience about that?
Yes, well, when I would pour the wine into the mug, it was so people couldn't tell. Like if I was in the house or something, I was drinking out of that.
Mm.
And then I was missing the very thing I used to love about drinking, or the glasses. I used to love to hold the glass and thought it was all this. And now it was like, okay, I just got to have this. And something I was feeding. I actually was not feeding. I was covering up. So part of this recovery, and I do think we all have unique recoveries, is digging deep. I've really come up with like four things that I feel like the first thing is we've got to know ourselves. We've got to
Mhm.
be so honest with what's really going on. And it's hard to do by yourself. And so I was becoming more um, aloof and not feeling an integrity or like, well, would you call it feeling like a fake? Like,
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that what was one of my questions in this segment for you is you're also a spiritual leader and a spiritual teacher. And here you are, a highly functioning alcoholic. How do you, how do, there's this idea that you are an imposter, right? Doesn't it feel that way? Because that's how I felt for so many years as a spiritual teacher and a spiritual leader. I'm like, how could anyone possibly believe what I'm saying when I can't get my act together?
that is something that I carried and worked with. And when I was first identified by my dear friend, who is a naturopathic doctor, she said, Linda, we were having lunch. I think you're a highly functioning alcoholic. I don't even know. She said, you think. I don't even see. She thinks she said, I think. And I went, whoa, I thought I was really hiding that just, so I went deeper. I hit it more.
Hmm.
When it came up with from her the second time, I thought, ah, highly functioning. What is one? And when you're talking about living like in this, feeling like a fake or whatever, I had done some research on what is a highly functioning alcoholic.
Yeah.
And one of the things, and I just pulled it up because they were notes to myself, is like living a double life. I believed I had everything under control.
Yeah.
All right. I was skilled. This is one of the signs, skilled at hiding alcohol consumption. When I would go out with people, I just have one or two, usually cut it at two. When I was home, it didn't have a stopping point. When I was by myself at home or hiding. Also, this was interesting too, this double life thing. I create a refined appearance that differs from the stereotypical alcoholic. In other words, I can't be an alcoholic because I don't look like
Right.
the stereotype.
You're not sloppy.
Yeah. And then I was really good at compartmentalizing work or what I had to do or my passion or when from the drinking. But that was getting harder and harder toward the end.
Yeah. So what was the moment that you knew that you had a problem?
I think it built. I don't even know but when it got exposed by my friend and she looked at me and said, you know, Linda, your eyes are turning yellow,
Mm,
your liver is screaming. And I'm trained to know this. This is my naturopathic doctor friend. And and I thought, my gig's up, you
yeah,
know, no more, no more. And that's when the shame and the lying that I'd done to Ed, like lying is to me, or not being honest, let's say, is hiding it and not being
yeah.
truly who I am. And there's a saying that I totally believe: you are as sick as your secrets.
Oh, love that.
And when I got that, I thought, oh, I want to be free from that. I want
And
release.
doesn't the telling of the secret, it is a level of freedom, right? It gives you permission to get better, to get well, to go on recovery. Last summer, when I became a recovery coach professional, I learned many things from CCAR in that summer that I spent with them. But one of the things that I love that they said is that recovery begins when you say so. And I was like, I love that. I love that recovery begins when I say so. So, or when you say so. So I think that when we tell the secret, when we start sharing that, is when recovery begins. And I remember I was with a friend of mine and her daughter, and I said, I have I have obsessive compulsive food disorder and bulimia. My friend actually started clapping at the table. She's like, I see, recovery has begun. And I'm like, yes, I guess it has. I guess it has.
That's true. That's what happened to me. And when you said that point, when I reached that low point, and I called my husband and I said, I have to tell you something when you come home from work tonight. We have to have and I said,
Mhm.
this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, talk about emotional crying and releasing. And, and he kind of had an idea. And I'm pretty sure my friend, they would have done an intervention on me, I believe. But it was at that point, and I thought, I need help. I can't do it by myself. My friend was looking for treatment centers, and I said, I don't want to be around here. And then when I thought, well, I don't want to be away from my husband, I want to be away from Ed. And then I started checking into AA, and I saw if you can go to 90 meetings in 90 days, so kind of commitment to that. And I thought, if I can do that, because I hadn't been able to, I could go maybe a month or two
Yeah,
without, but if I can do that, then I'll give this a try and I'll stay home. Well, I
it's
did it. And I mean, but I have to tell you, and I have shared with you before, but what happened to me.
yes. So we're going to take a break.
Okay.
And then I know I want you to tell that story because it's a pretty amazing story. So I also want to say, Linda, that Charlene from Canada was our first giveaway. So congratulations, Charlene. So I'm Robin Clare, and you're listening to Hungry for Answers. When we come back, Linda will tell that wonderful story about what happened to her on her way to AA and how to sustain long-term recovery. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Hungry for Answers with me, Robin Clare. So for more information on my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Clare, CLARE -ITY.com. So today I have Linda Roebuck here talking about how bad habits morph into addictive behavior and what can we do to live in recovery. So we weren't quite finished with the last segment, and I'd really love for you all to hear Linda's um, mystical AA experience.
Thank you, Robin. Well, the thing I was sharing before the break was about I had reached my bottom. It wasn't the bottom that you hear about in a lot of the stories of people that are in recovery, but it was my bottom. And it felt like the worst thing that had ever happened to me.
Mhm.
And so, and this is a critical piece. I had surrendered to this.
Mhm.
And really, I would just say it was pouring out of me. I can't do this by myself. I give it over. And I was driving and I thought, well, if I go, I found a meeting about 10 minutes away from me, but it was far enough where it was located. I thought, and it was at 6 a.m. that I thought, not going to know anybody and they're not going to know me. And so I didn't think many people would be there. By the way, I was surprised because there were like 50 people there when I went to
Yeah.
my, and yes, mostly men. And as I was driving down this windy road in the back, up kind of not on the main highway, I thought I was so nervous. I turned on um, my Sirius radio and I had it on spa music.
Mhm.
And the sound started coming out of the radio, the music, and it all of a sudden I was not in my body anymore. I was lifted out of the car. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. And I went, when I came to a four-way stop, which was short way distance from where I was, what was that? What happened? And I looked at the radio, and it was one of my favorite groups for that kind of music, Secret Garden. But
Mhm.
the title of the song was Hymn to Hope.
Him
And
to
I
hope.
went, there's my sign,
There's your sign.
hope. And that was my word that I took for that first year in recovery as hope. And I grew up in Hope, Arkansas.
Hmm.
So hope has always been kind of my theme and but I understand it's not wishful thinking. It is a deep seated spiritual hope. It's a knowing when you move to
Yes.
that.
And one of the things I heard you say even before that, when you said that you surrendered, and in Feast and Famine, so we know that the four tenets of Sophia, the Holy Spirit's divine healing path, is pain is inevitable, suffering is an option, and the third is surrender is required.
Right.
And you said that. You said, I surrendered. I gave it up. I gave it up. And, for everyone that's listening, giving it up is so much different than wishing it would go away. I mean, the divine knows, your divine knows when you're truly in surrender. And I believe that that was the beginning of the mystical experience that started in the car for you, because it was a confirmation that you were being held by your own divine.
And I have, from that moment, it was a miracle. I haven't had no desire for alcohol. I mean, my recovery story is very different. And and I thought, but I've committed to this process. I don't ever want to go back to feeling like I did with that shame and it was just deep grief and all the people that had supported me all my life that I, you know, would hurt by this knowledge, by being labeled. I will just say right now, um, after 5 years of being in that program, and I will just say it was amazing. Over the last couple of years, I've said I can't I can't say I'm an alcoholic anymore.
Mhm.
I can't. I feel very strongly that we have. Here's the hope again, but there's grace that we can be lifted. And I am just so grateful for everything, the pain, suffering, all and yes, the pain was from a trauma. I really realized I had post-traumatic stress syndrome
Mhm.
from an event and an experience that I had when I was 14
Yeah.
and had buried that again, kept secrets. Sick as your secrets. So I've been
Yes.
excavating. I continue to do that. I think we always will, all of our
Yeah,
lives.
we
But I
will.
am
We
not concerned about the alcohol anymore. Um, and
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that later if when we'll get toward the end of the show because I do have some ideas about
Yes,
how to, yeah.
that's great, Linda. And we do talk about grace. So in Feast and Famine, the fourth of those, pain is inevitable, suffering is an option, surrender is required, and grace must be allowed. So that grace must be allowed was just always very interesting to me, just the word allowed, um, because we know that grace is around us all the time. We just have to welcome it in. And I think because we have such trauma that from our childhood, our teenage years, and our adult life, until we can start until we can start clearing out the impact of the trauma on our lives. I'm not saying it goes away, but I think we learn tools that allow us to be with the trauma more and have it come integrate into ourselves. And so this grace, I mean, we saw that. We saw grace lift you out of the car, right? Lift your soul out to maybe give you a hug and then put you back in the car safely so you can make that stop at the four-way stop.
Yeah.
So what do you think about grace and how people can have access to that?
Well, that's a good question because I think grace is a state of being and we have a choice.
Mhm.
And I think we choose. One of the things that leads to grace, and I do like the word allow because it's almost like we have to trust in the positive outcomes. We like, and then allow the how to show up differently than maybe I think it should or something. But what gets in the way are, for me, is when I try to think I haven't got what I want and figure out how to do it. I'm in my head, I'm trying to make it
Mhm.
happen.
Yes.
I'm not allowing. And in the allowing, in that state of after surrender, allowing, using gratitude,
Oh, yes.
and then focusing on, like what do I want? I want peace. Let
Mhm.
me let me then allow it to show up maybe differently than I think instead of my trying to push through and make it happen or control it. And so I love the word allow, and the gratitude leads to grace. I was writing my little memoir, which I didn't publish, but it was my part on my alcoholism was called Gratitude and Grace. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah, I want to go back to something else that you said. It's about being worried what people in your life will think about that you have a problem. And for me, I was really worried about that. I was so embarrassed. But I never was greeted by anyone that loves me or cares about me with anything other than compassion and an honoring of being courageous enough to do something about it. What was the reaction of people in your life? Did you find that you had
Hid
that
it.
same reaction?
I hid it. Yes, but I hid it for so long. I didn't receive that until a couple of years later when I finally
Mhm.
said, "Oh, I'll let a few people know." Well, the first year, totally just kept that. I'm so ashamed and embarrassed, which is one of the lowest. Well, it is. Shame, I think, is the lowest level of consciousness. And I think it leads a lot of us into these kinds of addictive behaviors. But what was I going to say? Something about,
Well, we were talking about sharing the information with your family and
oh,
friends
yeah,
and their
yes.
reactions.
And the fact that I didn't for that length of time. When I did share it with the board of a community of
Mm,
transformation,
yes.
they were so supportive. I thought, oh, we were doing a heart talk and passing it around. There's so much love in the group anyway, and we have built this. I don't know why, but I thought I got to come clean and let them know. A couple already did, but I thought I got to let everybody know. And
Yeah.
I was ashamed, and I was received with so much love. Those that felt good about themselves were able to give me that. Those that, yeah, that was just an incredible experience to feel. And Ed never wavered in his love for me when I,
Yeah.
and his support continues.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's wonderful. So we have about 1 minute till we go to a break, and I'm just wondering if you could share, what do you think was maybe one or two most important things that you did on your journey to sustain long-term recovery?
No, come clean first. Um, Actually, I have a thing I say, and I call it how. How do you do it? Honesty, H-O. Open-minded and willing to look, well, open-minded, and that means like having a different maybe look at things or a different perspective of things. So open-minded, being that way. And then the last one, the willingness. So I will say honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness
The
are
how.
like the how. Yeah, just
I
kind of,
like
but
that.
then there's a lot more, but that's just a little
Well,
thought.
thank you. I do like that. So we're going to take another break. But before we do, Linda, can you just share again your two websites with the group?
Sure. It's lindaroebuck.com and circularleadership.global. And I am on Facebook and as Linda Roebuck. So
Yeah, that's great. So this is Hungry for Answers with Rob and Claire. We're going to take a break now. And when Linda and I come back, we're going to talk about how to live your life in ultimate service to others. Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Hello again. We're back on Hungry for Answers with Rob and Claire. So for more information on my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Claire, CLARE-ITY.com. So let's do another giveaway, Linda, and this will be to the first caller at 1-800-930-2819. And again, that's 1-800-930-2819. And this will be a copy of Linda's best-selling book called Circular Leadership, Together We Rise. So Linda, so many people think that recovery is the end of the line because their addiction was so traumatic, and it was. But what I've discovered is that when people can really live a life of congruency, when they can align their heart and their mind with their voice and their purpose, they can actually fulfill their soul's destiny or live what I call their ultimate life. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the idea of how to inspire people to move beyond recovery and really become courageous in their life and fulfill their destiny. And what do you how would you inspire people to do that?
I feel like it's getting in touch with why, I'll just be personal, why I am here. So,
Mhm.
what is my, and I'm going to call it divine purpose, the larger purpose. My purpose is to be a mother, a wife, that, but this is my divine purpose and aligning with that. So, doing whatever it is that makes my heart sing, that shows that in the world. And the way that it came to me was to be the example,
Mhm.
to get clear on what my purpose is. And I was in a coaching certification program, which I completed, and this has been maybe 20 years ago. And we had to define our purpose. And it was based on the peak experiences of our life. So whatever those peak experiences had been, and then I had to circle certain words that were in that peak experience. And from that, I developed my purpose. And it is so much who I am. And now I am living it. So that's why I guess I want to share it. When I wrote it, I put, and it is about service, by the way, but my purpose is to spread the light by gathering circles of light,
Mm.
using divine feminine energy and intuitive knowing in order to birth Christ consciousness on the planet. And so the Christ consciousness for me is the light that we all carry. It's not
Yes.
about and and so that has now, when I read that, when we were writing the book for Circular Leadership, which is an anthology that people on the ACT board shared in writing, or had been on the ACT board if they weren't currently on it, um, was I realized that's what I'm doing. That's what my passion is. That's why I'm here. And that's what I'm excited about, because I feel like the circular leadership way is our way of the future. I can, I have visions of how it spreads like sacred, sacred geometry around the
Yes.
globe with the flower of life
Yes.
and these circles connecting and intersecting. And then it has been so strongly coming up for me now, vision. And this is why I do think I'm able to inspire people when I get these kind of things and then they begin to happen. I had the vision about the book, and we were able to pull that off, 19 of us, in 9 months from the
Hmm.
time we started. We met all our deadlines. And I know it was because of the work that we were able to. No, it was about how we were together was more important than what we did.
Yes.
But because of that, from our beingness, the, the project unfolded divinely. And we launched right before, in November, before things were shut down in 2020.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting with that. But that to me is inspiring. And I will say what I'm working on right now, and this is the service that I see this as a way to spread how we can support one another. We do it through connection, support, and building trust. So you can be heart centered. You can reveal your secrets in a safe place, at
Yes.
least with one person, and that together we rise. And that's what the book is about.
Hmm.
And I'm working now on a manual handbook to go with that book.
That's great.
And
That's great.
and what I'm seeing for recovery is visionary empowerment circles,
Hmm.
not calling them addiction. Because I mean, we all have, I think, is my understanding, we all have some kind of addiction,
Sure.
and some are more severe than others. But whatever it is, to be empowered, to know you can overcome it with the right support. And it is support on all levels. It is divine support. And a
Yes.
couple of my friends knew I was doing this today and sent me messages about, you got this, the divine's with you. And that's
Absolutely.
what we have to remember,
Yes.
that we, so that's what I think is my service, and how when your question, how I love to inspire
Yes.
myself first,
And
and
then
then
others.
hopefully it gets contagious. Yeah.
Hmm. So, in thinking about what you said, you had talked about that that I'm going to say it in my own way. In
Okay, good.
everybody's life, there are events that have happened. And I have found, as a person, I used to do, I can still do for people, something called the soul plan, because I was inspired by the divine. They asked me a question. They said, if we tell spiritual seekers why they are here, will they stop seeking and start serving? And so then
Mm,
I created the soul plan. And from the soul plan, what I realized that I love to do was to help people to write their recovery story or their life story. One, to write it for themselves first, to give them permission to bring out everything that is being stuffed down inside of them and just put it on the paper. And then, if they're so inspired, then I help them to create, hopefully, a best-selling book by being their writing coach. But one of the things that I discovered in doing the soul plan is that our soul has been guiding us from the moment we incarnated in on this planet, and that everything that happens in our life is like there's like a golden thread that goes through our life that's connecting all of these major experiences, and they are only learning opportunities. And once we really know that, we can go back and see what was the thread, and how everything that's happened in our lives, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's what I call it, is all intended to bring us to this exact moment in time, and to be able to inspire people like what you're doing with circular leadership. Together we rise and the empowerment circles. So this is what's possible when you can move from addiction to recovery to your ultimate life. And so, Linda, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to be closing soon, and I want to just say to our audience, if you're suffering and struggling with addiction, please know that healing, recovery, and living your ultimate life is available to you. Know that you are never alone. You can seek traditional guidance, or you can even go inside and connect to your own spiritual team. As a writing coach, I know that everyone has a unique recovery story, and with encouragement and guidance, you can use your unique story to help others. Please sign up for my free 30-minute consultation to discuss your service and your transformational story at clarity.com. And also, I just want to thank my special guest today, Linda Roebuck, for sharing all of your great information and for inspiring others to move from addiction to recovery to their ultimate life. Please join me on the first and third Thursdays of each month at noon. And on my next segment, we will be chatting with Dr. Barry Grant, Director of Outpatient Services at Hope House Treatment Centers and co-owner of Safe Counseling Services, on the topic, Can Pain Be a Gift in Your Life? Stay healthy, everybody. Stay connected, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Linda. Thank you for tuning into Hungry for Answers. Learning to love ourselves is the one true solution to addiction. Make a commitment to healing today and see how you can reach your ultimate potential. Remember, you have a divine right to a life filled with love, joy, peace, and abundance. To learn more about me and my offerings, please go to clarity.com. That's Clare, CLARE -ity.com. See you next time.